RTE has received nearly 1,500 emails calling for Ireland to boycott the Eurovision Song Contest because of Israel's involvement in the competition. Israel is due to perform in the second semi-final on May the 9th in Sweden, but this is still all up in the air as they await song approval from the European Broadcasting Union. Joining me to talk about all of this is Eurovision expert Matthew Joyce. Matthew, good morning.
Good morning, Pat. How are you?
I'm very well. Now, this has been brewing for some time.
It has been ever since really October of last year. Really, there's been calls for Israel to be excluded from this year's Eurovision Song Contest, but also for Ireland to not take part. I remember back in December, it was around 500 emails that had been sent in to RTE. Now it's at over 1,400, so it is a large amount in fairness.
Now, RTE have pointed out that many of these emails are cut and paste. In other words, it's a concerted campaign and people are being given an email which they then cut and paste into their own email account and send it into RTE. It doesn't mean they aren't different individuals, but they're all delivering exactly the same message.
Exact same message, exactly that, in a sense, Ireland shouldn't be involved in a contest that Israel is part of, really. It's very interesting in a way, seeing kind of, the fact that, we had the Eurosong special there in January when I was on with you talking about the acts, and that kind of came through there. Bambi Thug won. And since then, back in January, I remember, there was a lot of calls then for RTE to boycott, but also still for Israel to be excluded as well. So there's been a lot of calls on both sides in a sense. I don't know which one is stronger. I feel like the argument for Israel to be excluded is stronger than RTE to boycott, though.
Now, the question of political activity around the Eurovision Song Contest, it's not new, but you can look to different countries and their regimes. Now, in Israel, we have a very clear situation in Gaza ongoing. We also have the Palestinian atrocity on October the 7th, but they are not actually competing in Eurovision. So their participation is not the subject of debate. But you could look at, say, the Turkish regime, you could look at Azerbaijan, you could look at various countries, you could look at Britain during the time of the Troubles, and yet they all competed.
Yeah, there is still calls as well for Azerbaijan to be excluded as well. Not as loud as the calls for Israel to be excluded, but there are still calls. For a good while now, there's been, for a couple of years, there's been calls for Azerbaijan to be excluded, but nothing's happened there. But just to even give a few examples of other entries that were kind of, they were questionable and they were changed. I remember back in 2015, Armenia had to change the lyrics of their song. It was originally called Don't Deny, which was believed to refer to the denial of the Armenian genocide. That was changed then to be called Face the Shadow. Then 2021 as well, Belarus entered a song called I'll Teach You, which was said to be a pro-government anthem as well, essentially teaching the anti-Lukashenko crowd, essentially, we're going to teach you who to support in a way. And that broke the apolitical rule for the lyrics there. They sent in another song that was called Song About Hairs, which was then ruled ineligible as well. They were then banned from the EBU for 3 years. That, by the way, is expiring around this year. So if they get back into the EBU, if they actually are approved membership, they could actually be back next year potentially.
Now, what maybe people don't realise is this is not the Irish entry into the Eurovision Song Contest. It is the RTE entry into the Eurovision Song Contest in the same way as the BBC enters. It's not Rishi Sunak who enters the Eurovision Song Contest because it is about the broadcasters rather than the countries, although, as you've pointed out, sometimes they might be one and the same. So what of the arguments that the whole thing should be apolitical, there should be no political messages, there should not be judgments on government's behaviours, it's just down to the song?
Yeah, just on that even, that it's a contest between broadcasters, that's what's kind of been emphasised by the European Broadcasting Union.
But that's the truth of it, It is the truth. Exactly. If RTE didn't have the money, for example, to go, Virgin Media wouldn't be putting in the entry. It's RTE's entry to either put in or not.
The only thing to say there, though, is that Virgin Media is not a member of the European Broadcasting Union. It's only RTE and TG Qatar, exactly. So that's kind of the thing there, that in a sense, You know, you can kind of argue that yes, the public service broadcaster is entering the song, but then there's always questions as to whether or not a government is involved. For example, you could look at the current situation with the Israeli song that the Israeli president has now called on the broadcaster to change the lyrics so they can get through. That's despite only weeks ago the Israeli broadcaster saying that they would never change the song or the lyrics, and they would withdraw if it was rejected. That seems to not be happening now. That's an intervention by the Israeli president.
Now, everything is political, I suppose, at the end of the day. The lyrics of October Rain, which was the first attempt to get over this political hurdle, October Rain obviously referring, well, maybe not obviously, but most of us believe this refers to the events of October 7th. Someone stole the moon tonight, took my light, everything is black and white. Who's the fool who told you boys don't cry? Hours and flowers, life is no game for the cowards. Why does time go wild? Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride. So it goes. That was deemed political, so sorry, you can't have that one. So the next one then they put in, that was called Dance Forever.
Yes, Dance Forever. I don't know whether or not the lyrics actually were put out publicly. I couldn't find them myself.
Well,
But
I have them here,
oh,
as it happens.
good.
So I'll read some of them to you. Running, city lights fighting my mind, hiding, I don't know what's right. Take me to the right road. There's no more time and I can't go wrong. Breathe in, I know that I'm strong. I break all the chains, I'm on the edge now. Watch me fly away, oh dance like an angel. Oh, you will remember that I will dance forever. I will dance again. Oh, dance like an angel. Drowning in the sunrise, my heart is so cold, but my soul is on fire. Someone is calling from paradise. Listen, hope doesn't stop. It just spreads its wings. So it's not overtly political, but the reference to paradise could, of course, refer to Israeli dead on October the 7th, but could. Anyway, that's been turned down as well.
See, it depends on how in depth you look at it. In a sense, to different people it can mean different things, really. And maybe the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, they want to essentially scrutinize every single lyric to make sure that every single lyric does not have any form of political kind of meaning or anything or any kind of inferring of political nature in a
Yeah.
sense.
Now, I've been
So.
told that the third effort, and there is a deadline for the entry to be accepted, which is what, the 11th of March?
11th of March, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So,
this is called Hurricane, and I'm told it's
yes.
based on October Rain, but
Hmm.
changes in the words. In other words, the song will be the same, the melody and so on, but the words will be different. Hurricane. Now, already, if you think of the effect of October 7th on the people of Israel, it was like a hurricane.
You could say that in a way. You could say that absolutely. I'd say the kind of the aim by Khan, the Israeli broadcaster anyway. They have said that they want to keep the same melody as October Rain, kind of keep it the same sound. And essentially, we haven't heard the song though, but so we wouldn't really know. But then they want to change the lyrics entirely. So that we've been told anyway, according to Israeli media, that the first submission of Hurricane was rejected, and now they have submitted a second version only yesterday, as far as I'm aware. And yes, 11th of March is the deadline. However, the broadcaster does plan on revealing the song on the 10th. So whether or not they even get it approved by then, we don't know what's actually going to happen. They may still air a song and they may say whether or not it's been approved, but we actually don't know what's going to happen until at least the 11th. But the one thing to add, though, is that although the 11th of March is the deadline, it's not the deadline for the broadcaster to release the song publicly. It's only the deadline for the EBU to approve the song, just to point that out.
Yeah. Finally, I should ask you about, who's in, who's out. Russia out?
Yes, Russia is still out. So the kind of thing what happened there. So that from 2022, they were excluded after it invaded Ukraine, and with the EBU saying Russia taking part would bring the contest into disrepute. But as a result, then all Russian broadcasters that were EBU members actually quit the union. So that in a sense, originally it was the EBU banning them for the
Yeah.
year.
This is the old Groucho
But
Marx line, I don't want to be a member of a club that wouldn't have me.
exactly. So, and essentially by them, withdrawing from the union, that actually took the decision for the following year out of the EBU's hands entirely. So in a way, the EBU were like, okay, we don't actually have to think about whether or not they have to take part.
Yeah.
So
And are other countries mulling over Israel's participation and perhaps boycotting if the Israelis are there?
it's very interesting, actually. In Iceland at the moment, they chose their song on Saturday through a national final. Their song Verkeppnin is what it's called. And basically in previous years, similar to what would happen with Eurosong, they choose the song and that automatically goes to the Eurovision Song Contest. However, this year, the broadcaster RUV has already said that they were kind of essentially unlinking the national final to Eurovision. So they would have to have negotiations with the singer to see whether or not they want to take part. That's similar to what they already do in Italy. But the only thing is that RUV have actually not ruled out the fact that they might boycott. They have essentially said they're going to think about it, really. They've said that for a while now. So it's kind of a decision between the broadcaster and the singer. And then as well as that, then there were two other open letters in other countries. Over 1,000 Swedish artists called for Israel to be excluded. And not necessarily that Sweden should boycott. It'd be quite awkward if they boycotted in their own country that's being held in. And then another letter was signed by 1,400 artists from Finland and Iceland. So there's a lot of voices out there from different countries.
All right. Well, look, it's a very interesting discussion. Eurovision always maybe in danger of being political, but this one very overtly so, I suppose. Matthew Joyce, a Eurovision expert, thank you very much for joining us.